Welcome to Composer Chatter, where the musicians of the Del Sol String Quartet sit down and talk about music and anything else with the composers that we love. If you'd like to learn more, check out our website, delsolquartet.com, or find us on social media at Del Sol Quartet. Thanks.
I'm Charlton Lee, and I'm here today with Marguerite Brown, and we're just going to have a little chat about our Composer Incubator. Great to have you with us, Marguerite.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me, Charlton.
So maybe we can start a little bit with just a little bit about your background as a composer. What made you want to become a composer?
Probably around middle school. I was doing, I didn't have that much music in my early childhood, but when my stepfather bought me my first guitar when I was around 10, and I just started teaching myself and then eventually took lessons. And really shortly after I started um, reading music, I started composing, although not so much on paper until a bit later, maybe in my late teens. But I was already composing and doing a lot of multi-track recording by the time I was in middle school. And multi-track recording was actually a big part of um, what led me to written composition then and studying composition formally, because I wanted to be able to to have other people realize all of the parts, because initially I sort of just recorded all of the parts myself and played all of the parts. So I was really interested in having other, people come into that world with me.
That sounds perfect. And so now with our Composer Incubator project, you have four people tracking at the same time for you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Which has been amazing. Totally huge privilege to be able to work with you guys, over a long span of time where I can really luxuriate in the process, which is very rare.
So how is, I mean, it's a luxury. I mean, it's a luxury for us as well to be able
Yeah.
to watch that process and watch the pieces grow and develop and to actually kind of get into your brain a little bit in terms of what you're thinking, how you're thinking, and how you're going about it. What do you think? What would you say is like kind of the big differences between having this being able to test things out live with the performers versus like being more in your own space for the entire process?
Yeah. I mean, I am able to tweak things in a way that I just wouldn't normally be able to. So, in a way, I think I'm getting a lot more of what I want. Whereas if I'm composing the piece all at once and sort of delivering it to the ensemble, and maybe we get a couple rehearsals together, maybe, often it's no rehearsals or one rehearsal. I also write music where it's in, the intention is to not rehearse it. So that's a whole different thing as well. Um, but in this case, yeah, I'm able to really get what I want out of the piece, I think, because I'm able to tweak it in all of these, shorter intervals and uh, different stages, rather than sort of tweaking it after the whole thing is, for the most part, fully realized.
I think it's been really fun for us to get you've been very quick with incorporating new ideas and sending us new drafts and each time there's like these really cool subtle changes that have been made or sometimes less subtle but I think an idea that we saw initially takes on a different form later on and I think that for me, playing music by living composers, that's the fun of it, is to be able to interact with you directly. That's always, I think, been part of the joy for me. And what was always very frustrating working on, music by people who have passed away. Uh,
Right.
we've, we can't email them, we can't call them, we just, can't really find out what was in their brain, what they were thinking, what they were experiencing at the time. I mean, there may be some historical records, but that's about it.
Sure.
A lot of these things are passed down in a weird game of telephone. And by the time it comes to us, who knows how accurate any of that is anymore. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, I was going to ask, since you guys do play a lot of work by, or the majority it seems like, are by living composers, which I think is awesome. I was wondering how this is different for you guys, because is this your first round of doing this kind of composer incubator, um,
Yes,
specifically, or?
this is the first composer incubator. So we had plans, I think, originally before COVID hit, and so things got postponed. But now we're doing it online, um, or mostly online. And one of the composers is local, so he's able to pop in with a
Mm,
mask and and see us in person. Um, but it really has been. It's sort of like, when we go to contemporary music festivals, a lot of times, if it's over a period of time, say a week or something, we're able to spend a lot of time with the various composers and go over their pieces. But again, in general, in most cases, those pieces are already fully written.
right.
And it's more a matter of trying uh, to more clearly define what the composer is looking for, or trying to capture things that are not on the page, or sometimes, in many cases, if they're premieres, then there's a lot of mistakes in the parts, and trying to get those fixed and
Right.
clarified and so forth. So the process of like seeing a piece change and morph as it develops is really, really exciting,
And rare.
and very
even
rare.
even for you guys as an ensemble that plays living composers works all the time,
Right,
it's still rare to have this sort of long, luxurious process.
right. I just wrote my own piece for the quartet.
Really?
The first piece I've written since I was in college, and and even that, I'm not in the composer incubator, so we had one test run. I went back and fixed a couple of things, and that'll probably be it.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I wouldn't, I don't want to take up a whole lot of time from the group. We have like your pieces to work on.
Right. And well, it's also different writing for, I know from my own experience as a guitarist, when I'm writing for guitar, it's so much, as someone who has, embodied that instrument for so long, that's also very different. And
Right.
you as a violist writing for viola, I don't know, I think about that a lot. I prefer at this stage in the game, I sort of prefer writing away from the guitar and actually trying to be more up here, you know, uh, for other instruments especially.
Yeah, this was my first time. I mean, obviously, when I was in college, I used pencil and paper, and
Yeah.
I was using notation software, and then I realized that actually I was able to compose mostly just on the computer without
Hmm.
touching my instrument or anything.
Right.
I don't know how that changes things or not, but since it's the first time, I don't have anything to compare it against.
Yeah.
So maybe we can
Cool.
talk a little bit about your piece, which
Sure.
I think is just beautiful and really kind of mysterious and otherworldly. We don't have a title yet, right?
No,
And if
there
you don't
isn't a
have one,
title. There is a removed concept for the piece that is more personal,
mhm.
which I don't know if I'll talk about that now, but I may produce a title based on that. So
Okay,
we'll see. But as of now, yes, it's untitled.
great.
Um,
And are you willing to talk a little bit about your inspiration for the piece?
yeah, absolutely, especially from the, just kind of the technical standpoint. The piece is in Just Intonation. It's an 11 limit Just Intonation, and I'm using the Johnston notation, which you guys inspired me to learn that notation and to finally use it in a piece. I had been wanting to learn it for a long time. So this has been a great learning opportunity for me in that sense. Um, but the piece is kind of, it's exploring ancient Greek or the ancient Greek view on how to the division of the tetrachord. So specifically these three genera, the diatonic, chromatic, and enharmonic. And what I did is I devised a tuning system for this piece that would accommodate all three of those genera. And then I wanted to just sort of work with the scales freely and in no traditional way at all. And certainly not monophonically in this case, more harmonically and polyphonically. But yeah, I guess that to do a piece that was required or was inspired by sort of historical research that I've done with ancient Greek music, and then to use it in my own way, just totally free.
Cool.
Yeah.
Just for our listeners who may not be as familiar with Just Intonation, the quick overview is that it's
Yeah, please.
that are based on pure ratios so that they blend really beautifully together. And it can go into very complex levels of these ratios, which get more dissonant sounding. I think that sense of naturalness, it's like sort of more naturally occurring ratios, also seems to sort of permeate the piece in terms of for me at least, the feel of it has kind of a natural flow. When I say natural, means like being out in nature, and so it's like you don't hear, it's like there's not any sense of human grooves, like something you can dance to, right? There's not a tune ticka tune ticka tune. It's like
Right.
kind of like steady grooves that you might find in human and dances and things like that, but more the type of sounds that you might hear like sitting in a by the ocean, sitting in a forest, sitting on a mountaintop, that type of rhythm, and you play a lot with that sort of like that, the occurrences of sounds and these pitches flow a little bit, not perfectly evenly, right?
Definitely. Yeah, and I'm really inspired by the sounds that you were describing. I love being outside and in nature, and I definitely seek a lot of inspiration from those spaces. But yeah, I agree, and I also time. I wanted to do something for you guys that was very much about the ensemble, and you guys having to feel you're creating this rhythm. There's a lot of freedom in the rhythm, I guess, for you guys to sort of make it your own, and perhaps you guys are also inspired by those natural rhythms and are incorporating those just from your own place.
I mean, I feel like we the way that the score is laid out, it allows us that freedom that you're talking about to interact with each other in a way that is not really strictly bound.
Yeah, definitely.
But having, seeing the slight unevennesses in the score gives us that that sense of interaction without trying to find a specific groove. So,
yeah. Well, I've become more interested in not being gridlocked.
yeah.
And I think a lot of my early music was gridlocked, which is fine. I mean, in the early days, I was mimicking a lot of other people's music as well. And so one way to get away from that was to sort of, how do I really want to experience these sounds moving through time? And I figured out that I wasn't so interested in music that was gridlocked.
Yeah. Now, Marguerite, what brought you into the world of Just Intonation to start with?
I think there was a point in just my my musical life, my creative life, where I started to get just really bored of music. And I sort of was wondering why am I just, it's just dead. It doesn't, I mean, and granted, I had been doing it for a long time, and I could have just been, we have fluctuations with creativity where sometimes I just don't want anything to do with music. And I realized that, but I think this was different in that I really was wanting something fresh. My ears were wanting something fresh, and I didn't really know what that was. I played classical guitar for so many years, and that was starting to sound really colorless to me. And I love classical guitar, nothing against classical guitar, but I just wanted, there were colors that were missing. And so I think I started to explore different tuning systems, and not even necessarily just intonation at first, just alternate ways of approaching tuning. And then eventually when I was doing my master's degree at Santa Cruz, there were a community of people that were really interested in just intonation. And so I started to research it, and then I learned more about the history of theory and how significant it was. So that kind of got me into that world, and then there wasn't really any turning back. It's just been a resource for me that has yielded a lot of experiments, hopefully like an endless amount.
Right. Well, I think certainly many of the world traditions of music outside of the European one
Absolutely.
is connected to some type of just intonation tuning.
Yeah.
And even in the older European stuff, of course, before they started to get fancy and wanted to do a lot of modulations, it was also in that realm. And so
Right.
I feel like when we talk about just intonation, there's elements of people working in the field where they go really abstract and
Hmm.
kind of odd and unusual, but there's other parts of the spectrum which are just very, very traditional.
Right.
Many folk tunes and such are basically in a more of a just intonation type of tuning. So I think that was always what fascinated me when I first came across that and started to realize, sitting down and analyzing the sort of Western European style of even tempered tuning, I realized, wait a minute, none of this lines up properly, and so it just always sounds a little square. Everything's a little bit too even, and if you do like a perfect analysis, it becomes like sort of irrational numbers. Um,
Really out of tune.
right, it's a bit out of tune. Well, my I remember my grandparents who were from China, of course, they always complained that Western music just sounded horrendously out of tune to them. And as a kid who grew up with Western European music, I couldn't understand why until I started to listen more carefully and begin to understand what I was listening for. And then I finally began to understand what they were talking about. And now
Hmm.
whenever I hear a piano or a normal piano, it just sounds horrendous to me. It's just like so out of tune. Um,
Yeah.
which is, there's nothing wrong there. It's just like my ears have like changed.
Well, it's practical. I mean, it also is a symbol of the piano sort of taking over our musical culture,
Yeah.
which is really the Western musical culture, like you mentioned, and that sort of excludes, a lot of cultures that don't revolve around the piano. Um, but that's definitely I've loved listening to a lot of non-Western music and folk musics for that reason, is because there are intervals present that were not initially in my world, and that was definitely attractive.
Yeah, it also finally resolved for me a frustration that I had ever since I was a kid, and that was like, how do I play in tune on a fretless
Right.
instrument?
Right.
And because like sometimes this note sounds good, here, and sometimes it's definitely in a different place. And then as a kid, I could never figure out why. And people say play in tune. I was like, well, but which one? Right? And I just didn't have the language or the the structure to talk about it.
Yeah.
And when I discovered the Just Intonation theory and stuff, and Ben Johnston's work in particular, I was like, all of a sudden everything just like became crystal clear, and all the troubles that I had were could be specifically identified. I knew why I was having trouble with certain pitches and why I could some I was hearing it this way or that way, and that you can choose, and there are different options, which is
Right.
actually really exciting. It actually just opens up what possibilities there are in terms of how we inflect different types of harmonies and so forth.
Right. Yeah, that's something that I'm super interested in my work. But it's funny that you say that because um, I think it's strange that the overtone series isn't like the first thing you learn in a music theory class. It's all like, why was it the thing that I learned way after I learned how to write, like even like like, you know, I knew about how to write a 4-part fugue before I knew about the overtone series.
Right.
It's just, it's a little bit strange to me, but
I agree.
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
We're really looking forward to the finished product, and I think we're probably getting close now, right? Unless you have some new inspiration.
Well, yeah, I have. I'm sort of thinking that there might be 2 versions of the piece, one which is basically finished, and then one which is the longer version, which I'm going to experiment with some more ideas. But yeah, we're at least 2/3 of the way through at this point, so getting there.
Great.
Yeah.
We really look forward to each of these meetings that we have, and it's always really just, I think, really exciting for us to see, where you're heading with it, and what are the new twists that you've added, and yeah, this whole, we've all really enjoyed this Composer Incubator project, and we certainly hope that we'll be able to carry this forward with other composers going.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. I just thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm really grateful. I've learned a lot and just am enjoying every moment of it. So
Us too. Thank
yeah.
you. Okay, so, well, thanks so much. Thanks for listening today. I'm Charlton Lee, and we've had Marguerite Brown with us, and I hope that all of you will be able to have a chance to listen and or to see the finished product of Marguerite's piece, along with the rest of the composers from our Composer Incubator program. Thanks a lot.